I mean, I was told by my film professor there are films and there are movies, and sometimes you've got to know what you're walking into.
Yeah. See, but I come from a time when movies were films.
Carol. Did you know the sun was gonna die?
What? I never heard that. Oh, come on. That can't happen. I mean, you're the king, and look at me. I'm big. How could guys like us worry about a tiny little thing like the sun? Huh?
Not really sure exactly where to start, but the best place to start would be saying Happy Thanksgiving to everyone who celebrates this glorious holiday of massive gluttony. Not trying to get biblical, but if that's what we're going for here, then that's exactly what Thanksgiving is. But moving on, outside of being a big party pooper, Thanksgiving is a great holiday, filled with a whole lot of fun, watching football, playing football if you're in a cool house. I'm not in one of those houses. I wish I was. Or you can just, hey, watch movies and also eat more food. So yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. A very fun, cool little holiday. And plus, also, if I get to have Thanksgiving off and also get holiday pay on top of that for no reason at all, to live a day like any other day, eating food, watching football, playing football a little bit, then hey, I'll take that and run with it every single day of the week. But you're probably asking yourself, why is this guy recording a Thanksgiving episode on Thanksgiving instead of being with his family? And I'd answer to you, I'm recording this on Tuesday, actually. Yeah, a little bit of mind-boggling Christopher Nolan plot hole kind of plot twist here, which is very cool. I'm living in the past right now. You're in the future, but I'm in the past. It's a whole lot of fun little time loop stuff here. Your brain's melting. I can actually feel it and hear it right now. But, sorry, enough jokes and games out of the way. We're here talking about Where the Wild Things Are. 2009, this film has been in the pipeline of episodes for a very long time, and it's been very annoying to release episodes because of this little indie show called Arcane. We went through that, recently finished it up on Monday here. That full series review is out now, so you can go listen to the full series there. But still, it's been very hard to kind of ease in and kind of nudge in episodes. We did Civil War last week, which was our kind of first thing outside of Arcane in a pretty long time. And now we get to pivot away from Arcane, even though that show is great. We're going to pivot away from Arcane and go into Where the Wild Things Are, which was a very fun film that I watched a couple years ago, then watched it again this year. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be a fall episode, definitely. And I chose this movie because there's a lot of different reasons to dive into this film, just from the context of the movie and also just inside the film itself. Both sides of this, the context and also inside the film, are filled with so much rich depth and themes that I can really dive into for a pretty long time. But just going into the original, state of this movie, it was actually a book that released in 1963. I'm going to read the book a little bit later, but this book is huge. It's very big, has a very big following. So this book being around for over 20, 30 years at this point, it did have a bit of pressure on it to be a great movie. And was it a great film? Well, I'll talk about it in a second. But just purely going into the year of 2009, that's when the film released. This is a very massive year for film. I talked about this year of movies when I did X-Men Origins Wolverine, which we did earlier in the year. I regret doing that episode and that whole entire series, but still, if you know 2009, then you know this year was obviously very stacked with Avatar, Hangover, Zombieland, 500 Days of Summer, Inglourious Bastards, Watchmen, The Blind Side, The Proposal, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Coraline, Up from Pixar, Night at the Museum. The list goes on. This is a very incredibly stacked year for films. Monsters vs. Aliens, Alvin and the Chipmunks. List goes on. Like I said, this is a very stacked year for films, very extremely competitive. So for a film to be released this year and make any kind of money with Avatar, I don't know if you may have known, but Avatar made a little bit of money at the box office. It's kind of like number one of all time, but whatever, no problem, no big deal. For any film to be released in this year, it's obviously a very tall task and a very tall order. And we're also, during this year, coming off of a bit of a writer's strike, if I'm not mistaken, because I know Transformers Revenge of the Fallen came out in 2009 as well, and that was coming off of a bit of heavy effects from the writer's strike. So it's very interesting as well, seeing that happen around this time too. We just came out of that last year, and that may affect some films moving forward. But still, it's very cool seeing this film come out this year in a very competitive year, which definitely affected it a bit, but also just by how big the movie is itself, it did have a lot of things rooting against it to be a not so big success in the eyes of major audiences. And now you also may be, of course, asking, what did this guy think of Where the Wild Things Are? And I have to tell you, I really never saw this movie when it came out for a very long time. And, I didn't see it because, one, I was like a kid. So, my parents want to see what they want to see and they drag us along. So, yeah, I saw Transformers in theaters, maybe if I was a kid at that time and I really wanted to go see it. I could have seen it in theaters, but I'm not too sure. Or I was watching a film like Up in theaters, but a film like Where the Wild Things Are was very interesting because I knew about the movie and I saw the trailers for it. I do remember it still to this day. It's one of the earliest memories I've had from me being alive is the trailer for Where the Wild Things Are and also the trailer for the Fantastic Mr. Fox movie. I remember seeing that on TV being played a lot as well. But, as a kid, those are very interesting films that came out at the time for me, personally, because I saw the trailers for Fantastic Mr. Fox and Where the Wild Things Are, and these trailers for these movies, yes, they're kids' films, 100%. I love Fantastic Mr. Fox as well. That is a great movie, damn near perfect. But still, those trailers for those movies looked very mature. They looked like they were almost adult films, so I really didn't pay much mind to them. I grew up in a very Christian household, which was, I wouldn't say strict, but I did have some pretty good morals I grew up around. So I didn't watch a lot of, very violent or very adult movies, except for, I guess MCU and also Transformers. But still, for the most part, a movie like Where the Wild Things Are, to me, that trailer looked crazy. It looked very weird. It looked like it wasn't really of age to see the movie, so I never saw it, never really cared about seeing it. Eventually, I did want to see the film, it looked very cool and interesting, but it kind of died out for a very long time, so I didn't really miss too much with Where the Wild Things Are. And of course, I definitely wasn't the only one who shared that opinion. This movie over at the box office and also critics did not do that good at all. The film made $100.1 million against a budget of $100 million, so this film was definitely a very big flop. This film would have needed to make at the time around $250 million, which is very steep considering the year. $250 million, and this year is definitely not that easy to come by. Henceforth, the film ranked number 60 worldwide for 2009. It ranked number 60. So, yes, not good. The film did not perform at all. Definitely, there wasn't really ever a chance of this film getting a sequel, I don't think. The movie doesn't end at a point where a sequel is even exactly hinted or really needed, but still, the studio, and also, Spike Jonze felt really bad for him. The movie just didn't really perform well to garner any kind of love for future installments or future adaptations from this Arthur. So, that was definitely a little bit upsetting for the movie. But, even looking beyond that into the Rotten Tomatoes side of things, the film isn't doing so hot on there either. The movie has a 73% critic score and a 57% audience score, which is definitely not exactly where you want to be with the movie. You at least want to be at a 80% for Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not even a big believer in Rotten Tomatoes, but still, that's kind of the area you want to be at. But 73% isn't terrible, definitely very accurate. But still, the movie didn't land as well as it should have for audiences. But we'll talk about how later this movie just may have been a misunderstood masterpiece. But that's for different kind of people. I don't believe that, but definitely other people do. Just looking at some reviews here for the film, I do have a review here from the Roger Ebert website, and we have a review here from Roger Ebert himself, who gave this film a 3 out of 4 stars, and he said that the movie felt very long to me, and there were some stretches of the film that I was feeling less than riveted during the film's runtime, and it may be possible that there wasn't enough of Sendak's story to justify a feature-length film, which is definitely very relatable, definitely very true. Roger Ebert, one of the best critics in the entire game of all time, so I'll leave his full review down there below. But just going off of what he said, there may not be enough to justify a full-length movie. This book of Where the Wild Things Are, the original kids novel, is only 9 or 10 sentences long. So, there's definitely a big difference between 9 or 10 sentences moving into a, hour and a half film. There's going to have to be, obviously, for obvious reasons, a bit of kind of filler. You have to fill in a lot of the gaps here with this movie. So there was definitely, I think, a sense of this film's trueness getting lost in the feature-length movie. Because there's just, like I said, there's not really enough of a 9 to 10 sentence story to justify a hour and a half long movie. You're going to have to just fill in a little bit here and there to make the movie feel a little bit more full, which it does feel full, but at the same time, it does kind of feel like it lost a little bit of its sauce when it goes into a bit of the non-book side of the movie versus the directly adapted side of things. It does feel like there's some sauce kind of mixed together here a little bit, I'd say. Not exactly lost, but still, it's kind of like you have ranch. Ranch is great sauce. Then you add in some sriracha and then some like teriyaki, which is definitely very good sauces, but maybe together they shouldn't really mix well. But that's kind of how the film feels sometimes. Feels like it's kind of mixing together sauces, but not in a very cohesive way. Enough of me talking about sauce. I'm just very hungry right now. Moving on into Letterboxd, this film has a 3.5 out of 5 average. I have a couple of reviews here, two different kind of reviews here. One of them is the biggest one on Letterboxd from Frames of Nick, who gave this film a 5 out of 5. And he said that I'll never be able to accurately describe how this movie makes me feel, and that's okay, which I'll talk about later on in the analysis side of things. And then I have one more review from Frank E. Mermaid, who gave this film 5 out of 5 stars. That was just so perfect when I read it. It actually does encapsulate the entire movie in one single review here. He said that being a kid is hard, but being an adult is even harder, which is the entire movie just wrapped together in one little review. The episode can end right here, right now, but the movie is, I guess, really sometimes about being a kid is hard, but being an adult is even harder. That's going to be our main blurb for today's episode. So Frankie Mermaid, thank you for doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this episode, and I really love you a lot for that. But just going into it, like I said, this episode was supposed to come out a very long time ago. I guess it was supposed to come out back in September. I made the excuse that the movie just didn't really feel right to do at the time because of just timing and stuff and didn't want to feel exactly rushed. But at the same time, I think I was just trying to get a grasp on what it meant to be an adult. The movie is definitely having very heavy themes on that. And I was just trying to figure out what it meant to be an adult and try to prepare for being an adult in this episode. But I just had to come to peace with it. I'll never exactly be ready to be an adult. I'll never exactly be ready for anything. I just need to go out and do it sometimes. It's okay. So that's what this episode is. Where the Wild Things Are. 1963 is when the book came out. And then in 2009 is when the feature-length film came out. So it's definitely a very big gap and definitely a very noticeable kind of impact, but in different ways. The director and the writer kind of have a little bit of a nuance in how they're telling the story, but are both still telling different messages, but still they feel very hand in hand at certain moments. But sometimes, I think most of the time, the movie has a lot more, which makes me love and definitely understand this concept a lot more than the book. And just going into the book itself, since I'm mentioning it now, the book released in 1963. I mentioned it before, but the book came out a long time ago. When it first came out, it got a lot of backlash for being just way too dark for kids, being just a very dark a very dark book, my bad. And, it got pulled from shelves, it got voted out of libraries, and that was the reason why the book was very controversial at the start. And then they started noticing kids still love it, classes still love the book, so it got put back on shelves. And the book's history is very interesting, seeing that the movie definitely did face a lot of those same things the book did. And then for me, my personal history with the book, I've definitely seen this book a lot inside of libraries, but I personally have never read it. Once again, I grew up in a Christian house. It wasn't exactly strict, but still I grew up around some, certain morals and values, so I never even touched this book. It looked like a book I wasn't supposed to read at all. It looked very dark, very scary. I was instead reading the Berenstain Bears and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's very fun books instead. So yeah, I never even actually read the book. Even as I went into high school and middle school, I still decided to stay firmly away from the book. And I didn't even read it until recently for this episode. And I definitely have to say the book is cool, I guess. I'm not exactly missing anything much, but just so we're all on the same page with the book, I'll just read it for myself. It's literally only 10 sentences long, so, we're going to get through here in like 3 minutes, so it's not that very long. It's mostly pictures and imagery, so, if you want to read the book, there's like a PDF on Google and also Firefox or whatever, so you can go read it anytime you want. But just so we're all on page here, I'll read the book and also link it down below if you want to just kind of flip through it a little bit. Starting off here in the book, the very first page of the book, the exact front cover, my bad, is Where the Wild Things Are. The story and pictures are by Maurice Sendak, the author of this book. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another, his mother called him Wild Thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to his bed without eating anything at all. That very night, in Max's room grew a forest, and grew and grew until a ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around him and grew. and an ocean tumbled by a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through the night and day, and in and out of weeks, and almost for over a year, to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible teeth, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once, and they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all, and made him king of all the wild things. "And now," cried Max, "let the wild rumpus start." "Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all the wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone else loved him the most. Then all around from far away across the road he smelled good things to eat, so he gave up being their king where the wild things are. But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go, we'll eat you up, and we love you so." And Max said no. The wild things roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed him their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye, and sailed back over a year, and in and out of weeks, and all through a day, and into the night of his very own room, where he found his suppers waiting for him, and it was still hot. So like I said, that's the book. It's very short and sweet, though. It's like 5 minutes long, if even that. And the book got pulled from shelves for being known as being a book to support child endangerment and child harm by sending him to bed without food, which, that's, whatever. I think that, all of the parent-teacher conferences stuff and just very stupid. All of those councils of adults saying, hey, kids can't read Diary of a Big Kid because I said so. Literally, I hate you. If you're one of those people, I'm sorry. That's a very strong word, but still, it's a kid's book. It doesn't really matter. But still, regardless of that, like I said, this book is very short, very, very small and short and sweet. And it's very hard to adapt, as we can see. Definitely a very, I wouldn't say controversial, but definitely a very iconic book to adapt, and definitely very cool as well. But, the movie definitely followed in the footsteps of the book, in the sense that, for me, as a kid, like I said, the movie looks very dark and does look very scary and very horrifying to me. As a little boy seeing this movie on TV, the trailers, I was definitely very terrified as a child. And was I a wuss and a definitely big nerd as a kid? Yes, absolutely. But, still, the book has a very dark color palette. It definitely looks like a very dark tone, very dark and mature themes as well, even into the movie itself outside of the trailers. The movie is definitely very dark and definitely very mature, which definitely turned audiences away for obvious reasons. And so now, just going into the main movie, once again, I just have to quickly just give some shout outs here to the overall in front of the camera, behind the camera for this movie. It's very stacked. Spike Jonze is the main director who did Her, which was, Her from 2013. That's one of my favorite films of all time, easily. And there's definitely a lot of Her inside this movie. Yes, I know it came out a couple years before it, a couple years after Her came out, but still, Where the Wild Things Are has a lot of Spike Jonze's flair that I see in his other movie. So that's very cool to see him kind of bring that along into a lot of their projects. But, the movie itself from Spike Jonze is definitely very mature for an obvious reason. The book is also very mature, and it definitely is from the writer. He definitely made a book for kids, but definitely made it in a way that they would understand the adult themes, which is very weird, but still, I like that the director also took that approach. How, we have a great cast as well in here, but the real overall main potatoes is the story of Where the Wild Things Are. That feels very confusing, very weird, very daunting as well. And the cast does a great job of delivering all of that. Also, like Max Records, he plays the main guy here, Max. We have Catherine Keener, James Gandolfini. We also have Catherine O'Hara, Forrest Whitaker, Paul Dano's in here for some reason. Spike Jonze also is in here a little bit there too. And Max Pfeiffer here too. A great cast overall. Very good voice acting cast. They're all great. No complaints there on any front. But it doesn't really start getting interesting till the movie begins. And the movie itself, if you've seen it, you've seen it. Don't we need to go into a summary of the movie? But, the movie does have some similarities from the book, and then it does also pivot away from that, which I do appreciate. But the movie, I think overall, is a movie about being alone, a film about being weird and misunderstood, and that's very cool to see, but also, it does, like I said, feel very mature. It does feel very relatable as I get older, and does feel very real that the movie is speaking to me, but I don't know how to respond to it. I don't even know what it's saying, even though I'm speaking its language. And there's some similarities from the book, like I said, that really does bring the childhood charm, like him chasing the dog around. And then there's also the things that are very real and sad and weird that the dad isn't there in this story. That Max's dad has left the scene. We don't exactly know why from what I'm aware of, but Max's dad is gone. He's not there. His mom in the film is very stressed about life and about her her husband not being there, and her trying to date more, her trying to raise her kids in a house without a father is very apparent in this movie, which is not something that's very abundantly clear and definitely very integrated into the plot that we see in this movie. Yes, I know that Up came out this year as well, and Up is also, like we all know, and that opening of Up is literally one of the best things in cinematic history, but still, this movie, I think, feels a little bit more raw because it's not animated. That sounds very dumb, but still, seeing that this is real people all around the movie, going through real problems, is what makes the movie a little bit daunting, a little bit weird to go through. Instead of mom only saying, "You're a wild thing, go to your room, you're not going to eat tonight," instead, it's him running away instead of being sent to his room, which is definitely very real and relatable. He's only a kid, but I do sometimes feel like in life, we all just want to run away to somewhere random out and about because life can be very hard and daunting, and we don't know what we just did to someone that we love, so we just want to run away and hide away forever, which is real, and it's also kind of sad, and also something that's not in a lot of kids' films. It does feel like this movie isn't trying to cater to kids, but instead just trying to be a film from a director and a team that just want to try to kind of hash out their emotions and feelings inside of a feature-length movie. Something else that's also very similar to the book and the movie is that the wild things inside the book are very childish, and they're kind of, fun kids that are very emotional, and definitely in the movie they're that as well. But in the film, I think that they're also a reflection of Max's life and Max's personality, which makes him have to be the adult since he decided to take the role as a leader inside of this crazy weird island, which is something that I also definitely appreciate because, like I said earlier in the episode, being a kid is fun, but being an adult is even harder sometimes. And in this movie, I don't think that at any point where Max in the movie is having any kind of real fun at all being in this world. He has to take care of everyone. He has to take care of all of them. Someone's crying, he has to go there and take care of it. Someone got hurt, he has to go over there and take care of it. Someone's feeling left out and sad. He has to kind of try to include them into their games and stuff, which is also very cool, seeing that Max is dealing with a lot of a handful in what's supposed to be just some fun little vacation. And inside of the book, it's just really them doing shenanigans, and he leaves. But, like I said, they do shenanigans for like for a sentence and a half, and then he leaves them. But in a feature-length hour-and-a-half movie, you need to kind of, like I said, weave in a little bit more than that to kind of reach that runtime. So instead, they decided to build a fort, which is, something that's very cool, a little bit of a departure there as well. And I'll just quickly, I guess, go into my favorite character in this entire movie. It's not even Max. It's instead James Gandolfini's character of Carol. He's the main guy in all the posters. He's the main monster. And that's a guy that is very confusing and also very sad. And one of the most relatable characters I have this entire year, because Carol in the movie feels like someone who's real, and he is dealing with human problems, which is also, like I said, very relatable. But he's dealing with problems of them not being together as a family, them not being together in a pile, people wanting to leave and do their own thing, hang with their own friends. And that's kind of relatable, like how in real life, how right now I'm getting older and my friends are all just doing their own things in life, college or friends or girlfriends as well. That's all happening. It's all very relevant. Or, hey, I want to buy a house the next 5 years. How am I going to do that? I don't have time for Logan. That's very cool. Hey, understandable. No problem. But, that's just kind of the reality of life. And, a lot of characters like this in movies, like, Carol is in Where the Wild Things Are. We have that one big bird from Up. That one big bird from Up isn't crying about his friends leaving him for like an hour and a half long. So it definitely is, like I said, it's very cool, kind of interesting thing that we don't really see a lot too much, was definitely very appreciated. Definitely also a big breath of fresh air. Seeing this character of Carol in the movie just feels like he's me. He does feel very relatable. He does feel like a real person, which is what I love about him a lot more. And in the ending, how he just wants everyone to be together. He just wants everyone to be happy. That's the thing that I think makes this movie just a little bit more interesting, is that I think that everyone in this movie feels real to a degree. They feel like real people. They don't feel like characters. They don't feel like they're just drawings on a piece of paper. They feel like they're real people. The world feels a little bit more alive. And the movie's themes itself also does kind of embody and mirror how, the real life of the movie kind of, weave a little bit. How, in the sense that the movie is definitely very, I guess, lost. The movie's definitely very lost and just trying to find a sense of direction and meaning, which is like real life as well. I'll admit that Seven by David Fincher is a definitely very beautiful screenplay, but, my life isn't always all the way filled out and definitely isn't always all the way understood. I definitely do feel a little bit lost sometimes, which is okay, but Where the Wild Things Are does capture that feeling as well, which makes it very relatable and that much more meaningful to me, but does also make life feel just a little bit more frustrating, which is something that I deal with a lot of the time as well. And even just going into the end of the movie does feel frustrating and weird, but the movie also can just feel confusing and does feel like it's just kind of the right thing to do in the movie, which does sound like very lazy in me to write this in here. But in the end of the movie, when he leaves in the movie versus the book, in the book, he kind of just gets tired and leaves, which is, kind of cool. Yeah, I understand that. But, in the movie, instead of him just getting kind of tired and leaving, he does try to help everyone out in this place, in this island, but Carl doesn't get saved or helped that much either. Carl definitely does kind of have this wound of him leaving and not really getting to apologize or say any kind of proper goodbye, which is definitely also very sad. But, I feel like in this ending of the movie, it does feel like when he's leaving them, I don't know how to feel. I'm not sure what exactly is, he's kind of leading into. It does kind of feel like he's just kind of closing one door and opening another, which is definitely something that happens a lot in life as well. And, in the book, I think that what it really all means in the book itself is about anger and controlling your emotions, and a little bit of discipline is very good in life. Having good parenting and discipline is always very appreciated and definitely much so needed, which is definitely very true. It's good to listen to your parents eat your vegetables. But in the movie, I think that is also present here, that the movie definitely does go into a lot of anger and controlling your emotions and definitely all that fun jazz of being responsible, listening to your parents and all that. But, with the movie, I think that it's just not as easy as that sometimes. That's why I kind of struggle with this episode, because the movie just can't be as straightforward as you have to be responsible, listen to your parents, discipline and responsibility is always fun and good, eat your vegetables. Yes, that's true. But, the movie also is just about growing up and finding peace in sadness. And that is definitely a reality. The reality that being a parent when I'm a kid, being an adult is so cool and so fun. Yet again, when I'm an adult now, I just kind of am very weary that I'm an adult. Some days I don't even want to go to work at all. I'm working at a job I'm not really a fan of, but yet I need to make money to feed my dogs and stuff, which is definitely very boring, but still it's an adult thing to do. I'm definitely, I guess, quote unquote, responsible now that I have a job and bills to pay, but still it doesn't feel like it's exactly over. Doesn't feel like it's a proper resolution to what an adult is. I feel like it's always changing every day, and I'm definitely even more confused tomorrow and the day after that than I was today, which is very sad sometimes. But, that's also kind of how the film feels as well, to where I think that it can be very hard and frustrating and confusing to kind of go on life as an adult, like we see in His Mother. I love the most, and my favorite scene in the entire movie as well is just the final shot of the movie where there's Max looking at his mom as she's sleeping, and she made him a hot meal, even though, well, I guess it wasn't a hot meal, it was like cake and milk or cookies and milk, something like that. But still, she still decided to provide for him regardless of what she's going through. Her husband is not there. She's trying to date and find someone. She's trying to raise her kids in a house without a father as well. She's very stressed from work also. Then she has to come home from all of that, from her very stressful and very confusing and lost life, and come home to her son who is yelling and screaming and chasing her dog around and sitting on the counter for no reason and biting her as well, even after everything she did for him. That's definitely very draining and very sad, but she still chooses to care for her son because I guess, she'll go to jail if she doesn't. But still, also because it's kind of what a parent does, especially a mom does. That's the realest thing in the entire movie. That's very weird and very sad, and also just feels like how the movie just has a lot more depth to it than what we really take it for. It's hard for me to make sense of this film. It's hard for me to just find my footing on what this film means to me and what it means in general. But, I'm still figuring it out day by day. I'm still kind of decoding and trying to find my footing and figure out what everything means, just like in real life. So that's what makes the film a little bit more relatable to me. Makes it a little bit more happy that this film makes me feel something, but I'm not sure what that something is. I'm not sure how to use it in a good and bright way, which is just makes it even better to me somehow. And being a kid and being younger can also be very stressful and sad and depressing. But, I think that the pressure of being a kid versus the pressure of being an adult, it really has become night and day to me as I've grown up, which is definitely the harsh reality and sadness of being a adult and a parent. But, that's just the reality, and that's just the reality of why this film does also make me feel so special, because the movie is very confusing. It has a lot of responsibility and a lot of goals to definitely tell the audience, but it's still very hard to understand, something that definitely is kind of misunderstood already. So my final score for the movie is, I guess, a C minus or C right now. My rating for the movie is like 3 out of 5. I'm not going to lie. The movie is definitely very frustrating because it definitely has something that it wants to tell me, but I'm just trying to figure out what that even is right now. So my final score for the movie out of stars is like 3 out of 5. But, just boosting up my personal kind of bias against it, I got to give at least like a C plus or C minus for right now, because the film definitely does pass in a good passing score, but it's still very hard to grade the movie. Grade the film is definitely very hard to grade, but still C plus, C minus is definitely very fair. And that is the review and episode, pretty much over for the most part, but I do have to just squeeze in superlatives before I go to bed. So superlatives is like, the awards and film fun facts and the MVP. So I got to go into that very fast before we get out of here. So stay tuned. If you want to leave, you can leave. Final score for the film, C plus. If you want to watch it, I definitely recommend it. But for now, we're going to go to superlatives very quickly.
You are a blowfish.
What? Lady, whatever you're selling, I ain't buying, yo.
Well, my name is Skylar White, yo.
I get a spot? Okay.
All right, and just going through this little, post-show thing very fast here. Only a few things to really go through. The best scene in the entire movie, the real scene stealer for the entire show here, for the entire Where the Wild Things Are, is definitely the last shot of the movie, the last scene there in the entire movie. Definitely does wrap up what the movie's trying to do, what it's trying to say, how it's saying it as well, which is what really makes the film and sells the theme, sells everything, which is what makes me love it a whole lot more. Also, if I was giving a award away for the best shot in the entire movie, definitely the shot of Max and Carol in the desert. That's definitely, no doubt, the best shot in the movie. But still going on further here, my favorite quote in the entire movie, which definitely does speak to me, I feel like, every single day, is when Max is talking to Carol, and he says, "Carol, did you know that the sun was going to die someday?" And then Carol says, "What? I never heard of that." "Oh, come on, that can't happen. I mean, you're the king. Look at me. I'm big." And, that really does speak to me a little bit. I'm not sure why, but hearing Carol say, "Come on, that can happen. You're the king. Come on, that can happen. I know you're tired for work today, but come on, get up. You're the king. Just do it. Come on, do it for me." Just quickly going into here, if this film was a song, what would it be? Anything by Phoebe Bridgers, specifically the album Stranger in the Alps, or even the Punisher album's very good. But Phoebe Bridgers, I've been blasting her like all year long. If Spotify Rap comes out and she's number one, I'm not surprised at all. But if this film's a song, really anything Phoebe Bridgers, I guess specifically Scott Street, or I guess Motion Sickness is just very fun overall. But, still anything by her. She's actually perfect. Perfect artist, 10 out of 10. And quickly here for Buzz from the Backlot, I do have a couple little film fun facts here to go through. And Buzz from the Backlot, film fun facts, that's all it is, a whole lot of fun here. And for one of them, we have initially, Warner Brothers was so unhappy with Spike Jonze's final movie that it was less much of a family-friendly film they imagined, that they wanted him to reshoot the entire film for $75 million in early 2008. And Jonze eventually was given some time for more money from the studio and make the final budget of the movie very high, and also the final product satisfying both the studio and him. And it's very weird. I guess looking back on it, it does definitely look very apparent that the movie had some reshoots in there, definitely some muddled scenes a little bit at times too. That makes the film not really helpful in selling the themes. It does make it a little bit more kind of confusing as to what's going on. So yeah, not surprised by that. Warner Bros., as always, ruining films from time to time. It's not that big of a surprise to me at all. For our second fun fact here, the film, while debuting at number 1 at the box office, the budget was so over that they didn't even break even in that first weekend there, which is, hey, very apparent to exactly what went wrong. I mean, that rumor of the extra $75 million that we mentioned before, I'm not even surprised by that. That's just classic Warner Brothers, and definitely will explain the film's just not so big success. All right, and for our very last fun fact here for Where the Wild Things Are, the open call for Max was so huge it took several months and thousands of boys auditioned from several countries worldwide. Not surprised by that at all, but I mean, the actor here who played Max was very good and definitely very entertaining. Did a great job, knocked it out of the park. And for lastly, I kind of speedrun through that here. For our MVP, the most valued actor here for the entire film goes to none other than James Gandolfini. Rest in peace to a great actor who was very good at what he did. Obviously, The Sopranos is the biggest one, but he did a great job, and I definitely love him in this movie. The voice acting is great. The whole animatronic CGI stuff as well is very good. Didn't mention that somehow, but the cinematography and, CGI, animation, all that stuff is very good. And specifically, James Gandolfini, MVP in my opinion for the acting side of things. So yeah, gotta give him some flowers. But besides that, that'll really do it for today's episode for Where the Wild Things Are. That's it. It's a wrap. It's over. It's very done. Also very late. Got to get to work in the morning. I'm going to cry. But, whatever. Who cares? Once again, if you're listening to this on Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're having a great dinner right now. Great turkey. Also, the Lions won this morning. I definitely know that for sure. So, great seeing the Lions win on Thanksgiving finally. And turkey most likely is very good. And let me get a bite, please. I'm begging. I'm very hungry. And as for Christmas, it's very Christmassy time this time of year. December, it's coming up. It's very close here. I'm still kind of getting the outline calendar for December. It's still kind of blank except for like 2 spots. So, I'm working through that right now. I'm working around the clock on that. I'm still very confused, but I'm getting a little bit of a concept of a plan built up here. But until then, follow us everywhere. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd. My Letterboxd is also always down below. You can go watch me log films on there. But until then, stay swagged out, stay cool, watch more films, watch Where the Wild Things Are, and also Arcane. And until next time, I'm Real Sogan, and I'll see you boys in the movies.